Hello, my name is Ashley Shannon, and for my final presentation, I will be looking at Moche jewelry design and methods of manufacturing. So beginning with this ear ornament, it depicts a warrior, and this is one of three pairs of ear ornaments that was found in the Lord of Saipan's tomb. It depicts a warrior, which is located centrally, and on each side of him he has two figures flanking him. Much of this piece is in 3D. The piece itself is made of gold, turquoise, and wood, and it has a diameter of 3.75 inches. And so I've included a hoop earring, which is something that most of us are familiar with in terms of size, to get an idea of how large this item is. The warrior figure himself is holding what looks like a staff and perhaps a shield, and he's wearing a necklace. And interestingly enough, he has these ear ornaments, but he also has a nose ornament as well, and he has a crescent-shaped object on top of his headdress. And we will see these nose ornaments a little bit later on. This is another ear ornament, a very interesting object. It depicts a winged runner, and he is holding a cloth bag. The figure may represent a bird. In particular, it's thought to represent an owl. The piece itself is made using a mosaic technique, and the pieces of the mosaic include dark turquoise, gold, mother of pearl, solidite, and a bright orange spondylus shell. The image, and it's something that's very interesting in Moche culture, is that when they're making pairs of jewelry, they reverse the image so that they get almost an exact copy of the image on the other side. And so this kind of shows us how the idea of symmetry was important, and it allowed them to create these really fantastic pieces that really matched each other very well. Winged runners are thought to be messengers from the gods, so they would have been thought to deliver messages from the gods to the humans. These objects they have a diameter of 3.25 inches, so it's a little bit smaller than the other one. Again, I have a hoop earring that most of us are familiar with to gauge the size. Moving on, we have a bead. This is actually part of a set of 10, and it depicts a spider, which is located centrally on a web. The back of the spider, or the carapace of the spider, is actually formed into the shape of a human head. And this is something that we see a lot with Moche jewelry, the use of the blending of human and animal, or human and insect in this case. The gold wire forms the spider webbing, and then each bead has over 100 solder points. So this is a very intricate piece. It would have taken a while to make. The piece itself is three-dimensional. There is a hollow space inside of each bead, and it has a convex back. On the back of the bead is a spiral design which ends in the heads of three birds. And so because there's an open space inside of this bead, you could have put a pebble or some small item in there, and it would have allowed this necklace to have a rattling sound associated with it when it's worn. So it has a sound associated with it. And that's another thing that we're going to see a lot with the Moche jewelry, that there's always a sound. There's usually a sound associated with the piece. Again, this was part of a set of 10 beads that were on a necklace, and this object was found in the old Lord of Saipan's tomb. So this object's a little bit older than the other ones that we've seen previously. It has a diameter of 2.06 inches, and so I found these are Chinese meditation balls, and something that I'm familiar with, just to gauge the size of these beads. These are rather large beads. They're not small, and they would have been very, very impressive to see in person, especially when in a set of 10. So moving on to one of the more stunning pieces that I've seen in the Moche jewelry. This is a gold and silver peanut shell necklace. It's made of gold and silver. It has 10 gold peanut shells and 10 silver peanut shells. And the use of gold and silver is a form of a duality expression. So like heavens and the earth, the sun and the stars, gold and silver. Peanuts were a crop that was farmed and eaten. by the Moche culture. However, it's a very high labor intensive, and the yield could be risky. So this was peanuts were something that the elites would have been have had access to, would have eaten, and perhaps even eaten at ritual feasts as a special food. And it would have been a way to show your agricultural productivity and access to the sacred. So peanuts weren't something that the commoners would have been eating. This was something that the elites would have eaten. And so seeing this in a gold and silver necklace would have been something that would have been a status symbol. This necklace was found at the Lord of Saipan tomb number 1, so it's a little earlier. And the largest bead is 4 inches long, so it's pretty large. Most of these, I have a picture down here of a computer mouse. Most standard computer mice are about 4 inches long, so you can get an idea of how large this the largest bead would have been. One more thing I wanted to note here is that the way that the beads are fastened together, as you can see, there is a wiring. It's a wiring scaffold that holds each bead in place. So when worn, the beads would have been kept perfectly parallel to each other, and they would not have been able to kind of fall out of place. Moving on, we have another ear frontal of a spider this time. This ear flare depicts a spider. The spider itself is made of silver sheet and wire. It's a little corroded, but it is made of silver. The webs and the danglers are made of gold sheet. So if you look at the circumference of this piece, all around it has danglers. So again, we have a sound associated with this piece. The spider is, again, in a 3-dimensional shape, and it was made by joining 2 pressure-fitted raised sheets of silver together. The legs are made from 4 round silver wires. And it's interesting to note that snakes and spiders are symbols of fertility, not just in Moche culture, but other cultures as well. But it was appreciated in Moche culture. This object has a height and a width of 3.5 inches. And so I have another hoop here for us to get an idea of how large that actually is. So moving on, this is a nose ornament of intertwined serpents. And so if we think back to the first ear flare that we saw that the warrior had a nose ornament installed. And so this is another one of those. It's made of hammered sheet metal. It has a bimetal composition of both gold and silver. Chisels would have been used to carve out the openings for the eyes. Now these eyes are quite fantastic, but they are restored. They are not original. Something to keep in mind. But it gives us an idea of how stunning this piece would have looked when it was first produced. The piece itself is made of these rectangular tabs, and they are crimped together to stay in place. And it's interesting to note we have a serpent here. Again, spiders and serpents are representative of the supernatural and rebirth or renewal. The act of the snake shedding its skin is a metaphor for rebirth. And so that was something that was appreciated in Moche culture. This object would have been suspended from the nasal septum. So kind of like we saw in that first piece with the warrior, it would have been suspended from the nasal septum. Right here in the center of the silver part of the object is a little notch, and that would have gone onto the nose, the septum of the nose, and would have essentially covered the mouth. So this is a large object. It's 4.31 inches tall and 8.31 inches wide. So it would have covered the mouth, and it would have been something easily recognizable on the face. I have it down here, an image of a person who is wearing a nose ornament to give us an idea of what that might have looked like when worn. And the image itself, I believe, is Moche. It might be a different culture, but I'm pretty sure it's Moche. So it gives us an idea of what this would have looked like when it was worn. Again, it's covering the mouth. And so the pieces that I selected, I did so based on the fact that I think that they're really great representatives of Moche jewelry and the culture itself. So the methods, in terms of methods and materials, the Moche people were joining multiple metal types. They were gilding pieces and they were using wire and crimping. There's also new research which shows that they were doing a rudimentary form of welding. And so the Moche culture is often referred to as the master class of jewelry making and metalworking because they were extremely advanced in terms of what they were able to accomplish with very simple tools. They often use gold and silver and often incorporate gemstones and 3D shapes into the jewelry. Use of mosaics was also another thing that was kind of common. Lastly, the use of danglers or inner pebbles to make sounds is a common theme among the Moche jewelry. So these pieces also have a sound associated with them. As far as symbology and depictions, the animals were very important to the culture. These objects were used as status symbols, and so they were not just for the living, but also for the dead to indicate status. Often we see the use of animals or insects to convey a deeper meaning or blending with human and animal in their symbology. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. If you're interested in any of the information or pieces that I've discussed here today, I have my reference list here, which has additional information if you're interested. Thank you so much and have a fantastic summer.